Welcome to the Unafraid Show. Clinton Portis, Miami Hurricane great, picked a scab with me of the greatest travesty of the BCS era in college football.
We wanted to play Oregon. We really wanted to play them, but they would have got the same treatment that Nebraska got. We would have smashed them as well.
And we got to talk about the quarterbacks in the NFL draft and their likelihood of success. And we got to talk the 5 reasons why players hop in the transfer portal. And number 1 is not what you think it's going to be. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, tell a friend about the Unafraid Show, and most of all, share so we can keep bringing you dope content. It's time for the show. Let's go. I knew this topic was going to come up at some point in time, but thanks to my guy, Ralph Amsden, who sent me a video. It is up for discussion today, and this is the biggest mistake in the BCS era of college football history. And I just so happened to be a part of it. And that was my 2000-2001 Oregon Ducks team getting left out of the national championship for Nebraska, who got a chance to go and get beat down by Miami. And we were supposed to be playing them boys. And you were like, oh, George, it didn't matter. You were going to get blown out. Nah, that's not what that means. I've told Jonathan Vilma anytime he's been on the show with me, anything like anybody who will listen. Oh, but they had so many NFL guys. Listen, I'm going to break the whole thing down to you, how it happened. Because the Oregon Ducks, number 2 in the BCS and the USA Today poll, but some kind of way the magic BCS formula put Nebraska in the 2 spot and us in the 3 spot to play Colorado in the Fiesta Bowl. And do you know what we proceeded to do to Colorado in that Fiesta Bowl? 38-16. It was a bloodbath. And do you know what picked this scab for me? It was my man Ralph Amsden getting a chance to talk to Clinton Portis. And then he had the audacity to say this.
All right, George Wrighster, I'm here with Clinton Portis. I told him that you wanted Miami in 2001. I told him you're on it every day talking about it 20 years later.
Hey, for those 20 years, I think we wanted to play Oregon. We really wanted to play them. Joy Harrison, Maurice Morris, they had a lot of talent, but they would have got the same treatment that Nebraska got. We would have smashed them as well. So it didn't matter who we played. Just our mindset and the team that we had was going to dominate. It didn't matter who we played. You could have combined those 2 teams. We was going to beat the brakes off of them.
I was just living my best life, and then this text comes out of nowhere from Ralph, and then just picks the scab. So now I got to tell you about it. Let's go back to how this happened, because you had Oregon in the 2 spot in the polls, and you had Colorado and Nebraska right behind them. So now let's figure this out. Oregon had 1 loss. Nebraska only had 1 loss as well. So let's go back to the regular season, because at the end of the regular season, Colorado beat that same Nebraska team that ended up in the national championship by 26 points, 62-36. Miami only beat them by 23 points, 37-14. So you're like, okay, so why was Colorado not in the national championship? Because Colorado had lost to Fresno State right before that in the last 4 minutes of the game at Fresno State. Otherwise, it might have been them in the national championship. Now, everybody wants to talk about this Miami team and how many pros that they had on the roster. But it's not like that's all that were playing on the roster was pros. And my Oregon team, who people were like, oh, George, because they forget Oregon then was not what Oregon is now, but that particular team had a ton of NFL players. And we've seen time and time again, NFL players playing against NFL players. Oh, just so happens you can compete. And do you know what? We did not have to play Miami 10 times. We had to play them 1 time, 1 day, our best game, them have a good game. And it was curtains, national championship for us. So you might be like, George, maybe if you guys hadn't blown the game against Stanford, maybe you would have been in the national championship had you been undefeated. Okay, I can grant you that, but that still does not mean that you're not screwed when they put Nebraska in and then you go and destroy the team that destroyed Nebraska. But let's get back to the rosters though, because we had Joey Harrington at our quarterback, and you cannot debate Joey Harrington and Ken Dorsey advantage Ducks in that situation. Miami actually had 5 NFL running backs, but the only one that was really getting carries was Clinton Portis. Now you had Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, but they were only getting garbage time carries because Portis was just that good. And on Oregon's team, you had second-round pick Maurice Morris in the backfield, and you had Ontario Smith, is one of the biggest what-if stories in all of the NFL. And both were 1,000-yard backs, and both played a huge roles in the Fiesta Bowl victory, and obviously NFL players. Oh, what about the Hall of Famer Andre Johnson at wide receiver? Yeah, they had him. But on the Oregon team, Sammy Parker, Keenan Howry, Jason Willis, all played in the NFL. Oh, Jeremy Shockey. Oh, Jeremy Shockey was a hell of a player in the NFL. But you know who else was on that team? Your boy, George Wrighster. Oh, not one, but you had 2. You had 2 tight ends playing who played in the NFL. Oh, and Justin Peele just so happened to get 10 years. Oh, so it wasn't no slouches going on. And you had 4 NFL players in Miami secondary getting significant time. And in Oregon secondary, you had 3. You had Steve Smith, Rashad Bowman, and Keith Lewis. Oh, wait, all NFL players. Do you think that they were going to give up 200 plus yards to Andre Johnson in the national championship like Nebraska did? Absolutely not. But where they would have had an advantage is in the front 7. Because 6 to 7 of those guys were draft picks on the offensive and defensive line. And on Oregon, you had 3 or 4 instead of 6 or 7. Yeah, on the defensive line. Oh, you'd be like, they had Vince Wilfork. He was on the bench at the time. And we had Junior Ciavie, Igor Olshansky, Saul Patu. Like, come on, man. We had dudes on that team too. And no matter what Miami fans and people are like, oh yeah, there's no way. There was a way. Because do you know who had more NFL players? Oregon had more than Nebraska at that time. So all y'all out there talking, it is the biggest what if in all of college football history. The Wild Wild West is here, man, because the transfer portal is open. And I got the 5 reasons why players actually hop in the portal. And 2 of them, you probably didn't even realize were on the top of the list. And I warned everybody that this year would be an insane portal season, as did my guy Josh Pate, but that help was going to be on the way in the near future. And we just got word that the NCAA changed their whole stance on transfers. No one-time transfer, no sit out. If you are academically eligible, you are eligible to transfer and play immediately. Before we get into the 5 reasons, let's just look at the sheer numbers of this whole thing. Because according to Axiom, nearly 8,700 football players entered the portal between August 1st, 2022 and May 1st, 2023. And that's about a 5.5% increase over last year's number of 8,200 players. Now let's just look at the FBS alone, because that 8,700 number included Division 1, 2, 3, and NAIA as well. So in Division 1, last year, during that period, you had 3,284 players enter the portal, and that was 6.5% up from the previous high of 3,083. And that's nearly double the 2018-2019 tally of 1,700 per 24/7 Sports. Now, if you just look at that 3,284 number, that means that almost 20% of all FBS players are looking to transfer this offseason. Let's get into the 5 reasons why players actually hop in the transfer portal. Number 5. It's the one that everybody complains about: not wanting to compete, not wanting to wait, not wanting to grow and develop. It's a real thing. Number 4, players want to level up, whether it's competition, perceived coaching, or opportunities on the football field, maybe to play for a championship. Number 3 is the collectives themselves, because some of these deals are not getting paid where they're supposed to, checks aren't cashing on time, or somebody else is paying way more. Number 2, coaching changes. People will say, Don't commit to the coach, commit to the school. It don't work like that, especially when players are trying to go to the league and the new coach might not be feeling them. And number one, and this is by far the biggest bucket of players, it is being pushed out by the coaches because coaches are trying to level up their roster all the time over developing players. So players really only get 2 years at the most to show that they can cut it and that they will be on the field as contributors. If not, you can hit the bricks or you can just convert yourself into a regular student. Either way, they don't care. I saw a tweet from Pac-12 network legend Yogi Roth that said, to everybody considering the portal, please pause. Those advising the players, please pause. Every elite athlete must meet adversity and work through it. Ask yourself if you have done that and find clarity around what matters most. Compete to make a mature decision. Best of luck. I completely agree with Yogi Roth here because athletes need to be able to overcome adversity instead of just jumping out of the frying pan when they might just be jumping into a fire because the grass looks greener on the other side. Yeah, but people don't know you like that there. And maturity is being able to see more than just a few weeks down the road because injuries happen, you get better, a whole bunch of things can work in your favor. And your family cannot always see that. And sometimes you have to be the person to be like, nah, mom, dad, handler, we ain't gonna move. But we got to get away from this mentality that the primary driver for athletes transferring has to do with their desire to avoid adversity, because it's not true. Because first we have to admit that football is going to be hard no matter where a kid goes. They can leave Alabama, go to Western Kentucky. They still got to compete at the new place to get on the field as well. And if you're playing football at the collegiate level, you're doing something more physically and mentally difficult than most Americans who are working in cubicles that they will encounter on any day. And yes, there are some kids that just want a clearer path to playing time, but some kids are still convinced by the high school hype, and that's gassed them up by assistant coaches, program boosters, and anonymous fans on the internet that they're entitled to more than what they're getting. And a lot of kids have dads and moms and uncles and handlers in their ear trying to convince them, listen, you better than them. Man, that guy's getting that. And they don't know everything that you have and have not been doing at school. But for a lot of those student athletes, those things don't factor in at all. And we need to recognize that everybody's reason for transferring is different. Now, let's break down some of those reasons a little bit further. Let's start with number 5, not wanting to compete. Yes, there are players who do not want to compete on that level. And they're like, let me go somewhere where I can have a clearer path to go playing. They may go down a division, down 2 divisions, whatever it is, because their happiness is attached to playing football and they don't want to wait. They just want to get on the field, which that's understandable. And sometimes players have not maxed out in the weight room like they need to. They haven't studied their playbook like they need to. And they still are like, yo, I should be playing. I'm so talented. Coach said I was this and that. That don't matter, man. Them rankings can't get you on the field. Once you sign that paper, it's over. You got to go compete. Number 4, leveling up competition. Whether it's competition or coaching or just getting yourself ready for the NFL. There are players like Oregon got a tackle from Rhode Island last year. Is he going to be playing against the same amount of NFL competition at Rhode Island that he is at Oregon? No. Maybe he wanted to have that dog fight every single day with players on defense who will be going to the NFL as well to level up his draft stock. And maybe just that competition was going to be able to fuel him to be that much better. But then there's also players who are like, I want to win a championship. I want to compete for a championship. And maybe they don't believe that that's able to be done at maybe a player that was at Pittsburgh, a wide receiver who decides to go to USC and is like, I'll compete for a championship there. Well, they didn't compete for it. Well, I guess they did compete for a Pac-12 championship a couple years ago, but didn't compete for a national championship maybe like they hoped. And that's why sometimes moving is not always the way it seems. Number 3, collectives are not paying the money that they've promised and not on the time level that they've promised. And that's exactly why the schools are trying to take back the power from the collectives. It just makes a whole lot of sense. So what happens if the collective doesn't pay? Who are the players going to go and tell? Nobody, because it was an inducement anyway. So they can't go tell anybody and they're just stuck. Now, what happens to the collective if the player doesn't hold up to his end of the responsibility for money that they paid them? Nothing. There's nothing that they can do. That's why these deals need to be brought out in the light. The athletes and those making the deals can be held accountable. Number 2 is coaching changes. Look at how many coaching changes happened this season. And think about how many happened after the transfer portal was closed. You had Alabama get Kalen DeBoer after Nick Saban retired. And then Washington took Arizona's coach. San Jose State got their coach taken by Arizona, and so on and so forth. This happened so many times. And players signed up to play for a coach. Well, George, you're supposed to sign up to play for the university. This is a 40-year decision. But is it really anymore? I do believe that there still is value in having, your name tied to a university, to the boosters, to the community. There is value in that. But if you're a player that has NFL aspirations or even just wants to play, think about it. When the new coach comes in, you may not fit his system. You may not be his type of guy. He may have had the chance to recruit you in high school and he was like, nah, I don't really like him like that. And then your old coach goes to the new school and you get a phone call and they're like, hey, yo, do you want to come over? Because we could use you here and we think that you'll fit here and get a chance to play. So now the player is faced with, do I go with the coach that I know had me on the field already? I like his system. Maybe I'm projected to potentially go to the NFL, or take my chances with the new coach who is going to bring his guys in from wherever he goes. That's the gotcha. And also with the coaching changes, coaches chase money. Some of them do. And with all the money being given out to the coaches, guaranteed contracts and all of that, you don't think the players are looking at that saying, I want a piece of that. I want a piece of that $80 million that you're going to get win, lose, or draw. The way it works. And number 1, the quiet part out loud is that more players are pushed out of their schools to be in the portal than anything else. You think players want to jump around? Think about how many players hop in who aren't getting money, who are not getting money from their new school because they've been on the roster 2 years, maybe 3 years, and they haven't really seen the field. And now the new coach is like, or the coach that's there is like, hey, listen, we need you to either medically retire so we can get the scholarship back, or if it's a new coach, we just gonna flat out cut you and you can go, we'll pay for your school to be a student, but you will no longer be on this football team on scholarship. Because the coaches want to get better players. And especially at the bigger schools, when the transfer portal opens, I got this lineman that hasn't played in 3 years. I got this portal guy who may come in, even just be a depth guy, but either way, he's better than him, I think. So players get pushed out all the time, and it's unfortunate. And those are the 5 reasons why players hop in the transfer portal. You guys can always like, comment, and I want to know what you guys think. Leave it below. The NFL draft is upon us, and you know who's going there? College players that we have been watching. And so many things go into whether or not a quarterback in particular is going to have success at the NFL level. And you could end up in the wrong system. You could end up getting injured. You could get caught up in all the coaching and front office drama. Or you could just end up in the AFC West and having to battle with Patrick Mahomes every single year. Because we've seen, and we've talked about it here on the Unafraid Show. Look at Zach Wilson when he went to the Jets. There was not a single quarterback in that room that had ever thrown an NFL pass. So who was going to teach him how to handle the media, how to lead, how to watch film, how to handle the teammates? Nobody was there to do it. But today, though, I want to throw all of that out the window and give you my top 10 quarterbacks in this year's 2024 draft, according to the success I think that they'll have at the NFL level, regardless of all the other stuff. Who has the best chance to overcome everything? And solely according to what we saw out of them on the college level. So not project, oh yeah, here's what the NFL is gonna, no. What did they do in college and who for sure has the chance to be successful? Here are my top 10 2024 rookie quarterbacks according to the success that they'll have at the NFL level. You got number 10, Austin Reed from Western Kentucky. Austin Reed is this year's Tyler Badgett, except he already made the leap from Division II Western Florida to Western Kentucky without missing a beat. The dude threw for 8,000 yards over the last 2 seasons, and it makes you wonder if he can make another big leap to having success in the NFL. Because Reed is 24 years old, but a lot of guys are past the typical 21, 22 years old when they come in the draft because of the COVID eligibility year. Over his history, Reed has been physically durable. Dude has a nice deep ball and could see a long career as a dependable backup. And I see his ceiling being somewhere along the lines of Cooper Rush. Number 9, Michael Pratt from Tulane. Because Michael Pratt was a 4-year starter at Tulane. Positive sign. And that led them on to their 2 best seasons ever in 2022 and 2023. He even beat the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, head-to-head in the Cotton Bowl, although he did only complete 8 passes in that one. Now, Pratt is a smart player and a proven winner, and he made Willie Fritz a lot of money when he left Tulane. And he'll always be a legend in New Orleans, and maybe the Saints take advantage of that, and maybe he helps sell some tickets, but I don't see him in the NFL in a consistent starting role unless something goes very wrong in front of him, which then he'll have a different chance. Number 8, I know that this is going to make some people mad, but J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. I'm out here on record saying I don't get it. And now the young kids, they call it standing on business. Now, Michigan Twitter will say, I'm just a hater. Whatever, man. I've been wrong before, and I might be wrong again, but at least let me explain how I got here. Because when Josh Allen came into the NFL, I had serious doubts that the things that flashed at Wyoming could be harnessed to make him a consistent star at the position. But the Bills, they pulled it off. But there's a big difference between harnessing someone's talents and unlocking them all together. Because all we keep hearing about J.J. McCarthy is that he did what was asked of him. That's why he only had 1 300-yard passing game last year and averaged less than 1 touchdown pass over Michigan's last 7 games. Okay, so here's the truth about J.J. McCarthy. He was just doing what he was asked to do. But if he is coming in as a top 5 or top 15 pick, people are going to expect him to start. And that's too heavy of a burden for him. He's a guy who needs to sit, develop, but the likelihood of him getting that opportunity is very low, which is why he's lower on this list. Number 7, Jordan Travis out of Florida State. I hate that nobody's talking about Jordan Travis. Poorly timed injuries will do that to you though. And Jordan Travis started out his college career thinking of himself as an athlete that can play quarterback. But by the end of it, he stopped relying on his legs and started showing that he had mastered the position from a decision-making standpoint. And he was the heart and soul of that Florida State team that deserved to be in the college football playoff last year. But that's a whole nother discussion. And last year, we watched Jordan Travis outduel Jaden Daniels, the Heisman winner, number 2 overall pick, or 3 likely, and Riley Leonard over at Duke, and absolutely go off in back-to-back road games at Wake Forest and Pitt. And his 3 total touchdowns in Death Valley marked Florida State's first win at Clemson in 10 years. Jordan Travis is a winner, and I could see him stringing together some solid seasons as an NFL starter. Number 6, Spencer Rattler. I don't think we've seen what Spencer Rattler is truly capable of yet. And I'm not sure we even saw him in an offense that suited for him. He wasn't going to run around like your typical Lincoln Riley protege. And at South Carolina, they had him holding on to the ball for ages, looking to hit the home run. Still, when you look at his raw numbers, you'd swear that 11,000 yards, 77 touchdowns in almost 4 years of starting in the Big 12 and SEC with a Red River rivalry victory as a redshirt freshman and multiple wins over top 10 teams as a junior, that his college career wasn't largely unsatisfying. But honestly, it could have been much better. And hopefully the NFL gives him the opportunity to prove his 5-star status coming out of high school and allows him to make quick decisions and process complex offenses with tons of different options, because I think this kid could be special. Number 5, Drake May. Drake May is who the New York Giants hoped they would turn Daniel Jones into. Dude is big, athletic, throws a fantastic ball, and managed to keep the expectations of being a top pick all year long at North Carolina without fumbling the bag. Now, the thing about North Carolina's offense that I've been told by people who would know is that you can force the quarterback to run, and ACC teams did that to Howell back in 2021, and they tried to do it to May in 23. And May responded with 5 games over 50 yards rushing, and at 6'5", that ain't easy to do. I do believe that Drake May has every physical tool that it takes to have success in the NFL. But the one thing that he hasn't really shown is a dominant star performance against a top-tier defense. Now, that's an unknown element that will be encouraging for some general managers and scary for others. Number 4, Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. But George, Michael Penix has a history of injuries. We're not factoring that in, remember? But George, Michael Penix is a deep ball merchant in a league that has moved to coverages to take away the deep ball. That's a bit of a myth, because Penix completed 170 short passes last year at a 73% completion rate. But George, Michael Penix isn't an athlete. Running a 4.5 in the 40 isn't athletic. Did you even watch him at Indiana? He's definitely an athlete. But George's footwork stinks when he gets knocked off his platform and spray chart goes all over the place. You're telling me that there's no room for improvement? The dude can play at a minimum. He's comparable to Ryan Fitzpatrick, but his ceiling, we might have another Tua Tagovailoa on our hands. Number 3, Jaden Daniels from LSU. See, this is a tough one. Is Jaden Daniels the guy we saw the first 4 years of his college career, or the Jaden Daniels that won the Heisman Trophy last year? Because here's what I do know. Concerns about his size are unfounded. He's 23, over 200 pounds, and anybody that has seen the highlight reels of him getting blown up by defenders knows that this is the toughest quarterback in this draft class. He has the perfect demeanor to play quarterback in the NFL. He's not going to get rattled by losses or locker room drama or turnovers or big moments in the fourth quarter. Mentally, the kid is elite when it comes to handling pressure. Where I get concerned is his desire to take off running after 1 or 2 reads. He finally started trusting himself enough to throw into coverage last year, thanks in part to the wide receivers, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas as well, and their ability to win one-on-one matchups. I don't think anybody will ever regret drafting Jaden Daniels, nor will they regret making him the face of their franchise. But unless he proves he can master an offense, he might not be able to carry a team like a Mahomes or CJ Stroud can. Number 2, Bo Nix out of Oregon. Oh, here comes the homer talk. Come on. But before you call me a homer, this dude won me over. You can check my Twitter timeline. I was never, not one single day, in the Bo Nix camp when he was at Auburn. But I've had a front row seat for his skill set, mentality, and performance over the last 2 years. And I think his game translates perfectly to the NFL. The biggest criticism of Nix has been that he dinks and dunks and he's a check down merchant to get to his big stats. Okay, cool. The last 2 years, Mahomes has thrown a total of 2 touchdowns, which traveled over 20 yards in the air. The name of the modern game is to get your receivers and running backs the ball and let them cook. And there's not a quarterback in this draft class that is better at that than Bo Nix. He's athletic enough to move in the pocket, and he's proven to be one of the best college quarterbacks ever at protecting himself from the pass rush. His combine showed he has one of the best deep balls, one of the highest velocity passes, and some of the largest hands of any quarterback in the class. And he might look small, but he's the same height as J.J. McCarthy. Bo Nix is everything that you guys told me that J.J. McCarthy could have been if Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore had just allowed him to not just protect 7-point leads against teams like Penn State. Number 1, Caleb Williams. Honestly, I have too many concerns to count about Caleb Williams. However, he is the best quarterback when it comes to tools in his bag that we might have seen coming out since Andrew Luck. And I said I wasn't going to factor into things like destination into this evaluation, but we know Caleb Williams is going to Chicago. That's about 50 red flags all by itself right there. But their general manager, Ryan Pace, is doing a good job. But there's nobody that can avoid the pass rush in this draft like Caleb Williams. There's nobody that can improvise like him. And there's nobody that can fire a missile over the middle down the sideline like Caleb. And while Jaden Daniels is an electric runner, Caleb Williams has that skill set too. He's just more patient with it and taking off. Now, it would make sense to me that 10 years from now, we're looking back on Caleb Williams as the most successful pro quarterback out of the 2024 class. But it also would make sense if that success came somewhere other than Chicago. No disrespect to Bears fans, but forever is a long time when you have not had a top 10 passer. Even Jay Cutler only had one season in Chicago in the top 20 in passing yards. Now, Caleb Williams might be someone's savior, but he'd have to be an all-timer to be a savior of the Bears. And maybe he is. We'll have to wait and see. And that's the Unafraid Show. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and most of all, tell a friend about the Unafraid Show so we can keep growing and bringing you dope content.